Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
I'll just say it. Surprises come when you least expect them, and if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with, once more, as always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of industry professionals and pick their brains not just about current projects, but, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast and we hope that you would because you are listening to us. You can do so over at Apple, over at Spotify, and you can find every one of our episodes archived at our YouTube channel. We'd also really appreciate it if you'd follow us on the social medias, as it were. You can find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram at either at In The Seats or at It's Podcast One for all sorts of updates. And finally, and as I always say, potentially most importantly, please visit us over at In The Seats, intheseats.ca, where our hardworking team is cracking out reviews and news on all sorts of good movie, TV, festival news, and anything else in between that we can think of. They're a hardworking bunch, and I know they would appreciate you guys having some eyeballs on the content. And I know I do too, since I'm the editor and I'm the publisher, but that's another story for another day. On this episode, this was a fun one. We got to talk about a new film called 100 Days to Live. It's a serial killer thriller with a bit of a twist, which I don't want to spoil for you, but I got the chance to sit down with Heidi Johanningmeier. I apologize if I screwed that up. Who is the lead in the film and plays the victim, but also the hero at the same time. It's really an interesting twist on sort of the psychological serial thriller genre that sort of brings to light a lot of mental health care issues that are going on in the world today, especially with some frontline workers and things of that nature. And it's an interesting little film that deserves your attention. It's on most VOD platforms now. And when we sat down with Heidi, we talked about the movie and how she got involved, but also just about what got her in the business. And anybody who likes a good IPA and Paddington Bear is all right by me. So I hope you enjoy this conversation because I certainly know that we did. Thank you so much for the time today, Heidi. I really appreciate this.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on. This is exactly what this film needs. We're not a big budget film, so we need the people to watch, and you are a big part of that. So thanks for having me on.
Well, first off, I guess walk me through sort of seeing this script put in front of you, because while there's a lot of familiar beats, there's a lot of not familiar beats at the same time, and it really gets you to sort of this place where you're sympathetic, but you're not sympathetic, and there's proactive and there's reactive moments. It's really taking you on a bit of a ride.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I do think we are definitely different than, the average thriller out there. So an interesting question. What was my reaction? I'll tell you, I was actually in Ohio shooting a Netflix film.
Okay.
And I had the script and I was going to be going in for it. And I was reading it and I'm just sitting on my bed, and reading the script. And I got to a point and I got so angry that I slammed the script down and I had walked off and I had like tears coming down my face. But that was when I knew that I wanted to do it. Anytime an actor has that visceral of a reaction to a script, you say yes. So
for sure.
So that was the deciding point for me.
And the material is really so fascinating because, especially with your character, it plays standard, but you're having to straddle a line between sort of victim and hero all at the same time, just in terms of figuring out what's going on, but then sort of coming to peace with what happened and then sort of reacting to that. I'm kind of curious, when you ultimately got the job, how much time did you have to not just sit down and sort of go over it, or was it one of those shoots where you just sort of had to jump in with both feet and then just go?
No, yeah, I gave my everything to it. I think because I knew the gravitas of, the issues, and I just wanted to honor that as much as I could by being as honest as I could. And so, I was very blessed because I have friends that are psychiatrists and therapists. And so I was actually allowed by Ravine to give them the script and say, read this over. If there's anything that, would never be said, would never be done, write it out. And so we were really blessed in that way. We had about 3 different people that were therapists or psychiatrists look the script over to give us feedback. But they also gave me a lot of feedback, how I would act, how I would allow myself to be with the people that I help in the suicide support group. Also, I mean, this is such a pandemic that we are facing in our life. And I've lost people to suicide, and probably almost we're getting to the point where everyone has. And the real sadness of that is it is something that I think as a nation we could overcome if we let go of the stigmatism of mental health. So when I got the opportunity to play this, I read books, I went on the internet and watched interviews of people who had attempted suicide and did not go through it. And then speaking with my friends, but I wanted it to be all firsthand encounters. I didn't want to watch somebody's performance. There was none of that because, it's said every time it's like the telephone thing, being handed down the information.
Right.
I wanted information as clearly as I could get it. And I just really appreciate your comment about, who is she? She wants to be strong. My character wants to be strong, but she's literally just tested in the worst ways over and over. And I think that is a reality for people. So I appreciate that.
Well, and it really speaks to, I mean, especially the times we're living in now, because we don't always appreciate the stress that the healthcare provider is under, not much less the person who is sick and reaching out, but the stress that the person who's trying to provide that help gets put under as well. And it makes for such an interesting dynamic. And I'm kind of curious, because I got to imagine, because this is a low budget, no budget kind of thing, that it was a fairly short shoot. I imagine it was a fairly short shoot, but I'm kind of curious, as an actor, how do you sort of sustain that energy? Because you're going on a ride. And I mean, I've got to imagine at the end of a shooting day, you just sort of would go back to your hotel room and just pass out.
There was an IPA waiting for me every day.
I love it.
I am an IPA girl. So, we shot in 21 days and I shot for 21 of those days. And I have to tell you, at the very beginning of taking this, I did wonder how I was going to mentally do it, especially as someone who is a very, I would say most artists are a very emotional person. I feel happiness deeply. I feel sadness deeply. But I have 2 little kids. And so for me, it was, how in the world am I going to go there and then come back? And then go there and then come back for 21 days. And it kind of just came to me like an epiphany one day before we started shooting, because I really was stressed out about it.
Yeah.
And I had decided that the opposite of pure joy is pure anguish. And pure anguish is losing that pure joy.
Yeah.
So when I was on set, I committed 1,000% to being that character. And when I was home, I committed 1,000% to joy and being in the moment. And it really was dividing the two that kept me in a happy place and able to do both, and plus, I mean, so much of this is the other actors I'm working with and how emotionally available they were. Colin, Gid, Yancey, Chris, and then the director, Ravine. I have to tell you, when I first got the audition, I like to do research. I like to see who I'm going in for, what's their style. You go in for Peter Jackson versus Aaron Sorkin, they're 2 different things.
Right.
So when I looked up Ravine's name, I was like, this can't be right. He's a CEO. And it was him. And so I remember when I got the role, I said to my agents, this could be amazing, or this could be really tough to work with a first-time director who wrote it, who's producing it, and let me tell you, it couldn't have been more amazing. He was so open to anything I needed to emotionally get where I needed to be. And by the end, he would read the other person's lines if they weren't there, and I could go there. I mean, we had made this connection where I felt so safe with him. So I have to tell you, Ravine it's hard to know Ravine and not put him on a pedestal. He has no ego, and yet he gives 1,000%. Yeah, so I can't say enough about everybody, the entire cast and producers and everything.
Well, that's a fantastic thing. And I mean, I love hearing just how you sort of threw yourself into the part and sort of the dedication to sort of both ends of the spectrum. And I mean, I've got to imagine for you as an actor, that maybe kind of sums up sort of the process of acting, because on one end, you're going to be on this film, this emotional film where you're really diving into it for 21 days straight. But then on the other side of it, you're going to go do a show for 2 days and then that's it. And then you go home. So I've got to imagine the process, while being similar, obviously, will have some pretty big differences as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when I was younger and I didn't have a family, I thought that I had to live in that character. But I didn't have that option. I was not going to allow that to be the option. And so amazingly enough, it did work. I think it did work. And I'm really happy about it because, you never know how a film's going to turn out. I'm so happy how it turned out, but I do know the type of person I want to be to those that I love. And so that was an interesting juggle, and I'm really glad that it worked out. I think a lot of actors sometimes they're fearful that they won't be as artistic if they're happy. And I'd be interested to know if other actors feel this way. But I remember being, a young actor in LA and thinking, when I'm depressed, I'm so emotionally available and, I'm so there. And this tiny seed almost of like fear that if I were happy, I wouldn't be able to go there. And that's not true, because actually, when you are happy in real life, allowing yourself to lose that in your mind for that moment, that is the darkest place you can go.
No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, that's another thing. I mean, I love that you bring up sort of the artistry of it all as well, because I'm always curious. I mean, especially as a working actor, how do you balance sort of the creatively fulfilling side versus the gotta pay the rent side of the brain? You know what I mean?
I think I have to tell you, the Chicago, being active in both the LA scene and the Chicago scene, it's so different.
Right.
I mean, the actors in Chicago are there's a tremendous wealth of talent in Chicago. And you will see the same actor who is a series regular on a show being an extra in a commercial. I mean, we are just so hardworking and no ego about it. You can be the lead one day and the next day somebody else is a lead, and we really support one another. And so that makes it much easier, because there's no like eye rolls or underhanded compliments or any I'm looking for, in the sense of people acting like you're not a true artist for doing a commercial. I think that's silly. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you give me the option of the two and I can only do one, then I would have to be true to my art, but I don't have to choose.
Yeah.
So,
No, and I mean, I love that you say that, because I mean, I've heard similar stories out of places like New York where people are toiling off Broadway, but everyone's also so happy for the one guy when he gets to play a cadaver on Law and Order because he just paid his rent for 6 months,
Absolutely. I have literally left auditions with actresses that I go against constantly. And we've met with the producers, the directors. They're great opportunities. And we walk out and we're walking to our cars and we are friends,
Yeah.
you know? And of course we want it. But if we're not going to get it, I hope she gets it,
Right.
you know? And that is so unique to Chicago. It's other than the weather, I cannot say anything bad about Chicago.
Well, I'm in Canada, so I'm with you on the weather. So
Well, and I hear Canadians are lovely too. So maybe that's what makes us lovely. I don't know.
I'm gonna go with that. I like that answer, though.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I'm kind of curious, and this is something I always like to ask people. Like thinking back for you, is there a moment in your life, or even like a movie in your life, where sort of you had that pivot and went, "Okay, I want to be an actor. I want to do
Oh
this."
yeah. Yeah. Well, two actually.
Tell the
So
story, please.
okay, so the first one, I had a tough time in school growing up. I was bullied, and just it really emotionally took its toll on me. And so in sixth grade, they drew names out of a hat to do Paddington Bear, and I got Paddington. Totally by chance.
I love Paddington.
Yes, and the scene with the whipped cream in the face with the dad. And I remember all the little kids laughing, and they
Yeah.
weren't laughing at me. They were laughing with me. And I thought, this is nice. And then 2 years later was really the pivotal moment. We have this thing in Iowa called National History Day. It's actually a national thing.
Okay.
But you can choose any sort of platform and you write about a piece of history. And I chose Saint Joan of Arc,
Okay.
who's a total badass. And I wrote this little one-woman play on her, and I performed it. And when I did it, I remember, by the way, before we got to the venue, my teacher walking down in the bus and telling me to not embarrass them. And I think that has always stayed in my head. But it was a very dramatic little 10-minute, production. And I got done, and I remember coming out of it and looking up, and in the front row seeing my mom, who is this very English, very intelligent, doctorate. But she's tough. She is a tough woman. And I remember looking at her, and she just had tears coming down her face. And then I remembered looking around the room, and everybody else did too. And I thought, oh my God, I allowed them to feel something that they never would have felt.
Mm.
And it felt like this mass communion, like our souls all connected. And it was almost like time travel, like the closest thing to time travel, because we all left where we were and we all went on this journey together. And that was it. I ended up going to Washington, D.C. I ended up performing, in the nation's capital. And I knew that this is what I was supposed to do.
Oh, I love that story. And it's one of those things because I just think of sort of the state of not just the world, but sort of the entertainment business at this stage, where because we all have to be at home, we're all streaming, everything is sort of democratized on one level.
Right.
And I notice the importance for sort of not only independent, but more interesting, compelling stories like this film to try to bubble up, because it's really one of those things where I almost look at sort of this time as a like culturally as a time of almost curation to try to remind ourselves to, as much as we love sort of the big and the flashy spectacle, it's important to sort of support and bubble up and boost up pieces of art like this film, which I really think this is. And I'm curious for you as an actor going forward, like how do you, like when you want to try to find the next part, is it just a what's offered, or is it what's compelling? Like at what stage are you in terms of wanting to do something that, obviously you want to do your best work possible wherever it is, but there's always going to have to be that balance in terms of, will this get made? Won't it get made? Is it going to get sold? Are people going to see it? There's a debate. I have to imagine that for you as a performer have to sort of go through it on a daily basis.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And to go back to your first part, you're absolutely right. I mean, so when we went on Apple, when we released on Tuesday, we were 138.
Right.
And this morning we were number 17. I mean, that's crazy. And that is 100% because of people like you and because of the support that the people are giving us. We're not a big studio film. We do not have millions of dollars for publicity.
Yeah.
So this is just a miracle. This is a little bit like David and Goliath. And we're really hoping that we can carry this through the weekend. But with your question asking about making choices, let's be really honest here. I am definitely not to the point where I'm still not proving myself. I'm still auditioning.
Right.
There aren't really offers, but I have to tell you, there is something beautiful about aging a little bit. I do turn down stuff. I love my life. And so it has to make sense for me to want to step away from my life because I will commit so deeply to whatever role I take. So as much as you'd love to say yes to everything, Ravine didn't just write a script, produce it, shoot it. He then got it edited by
Yeah.
amazing people. He then took it to festivals. He went the whole route. And so that's really important to me when I look at future projects. I love supporting indie films. But I also need to know that the people behind it have the moxie to see it all the way through. So I do think that there's a happy medium of that. I'm sorry, my phone is on silent.
Okay.
I don't know why it goes off. Let me shut it completely off. I apologize.
No problem.
Silence does not always work. But yeah, so I think the essence of the film does matter to me because we're only here for so long, and I do want to make beautiful art. I really do. And then to the opposite, I have no problem doing a commercial. It's kind of the in between stuff that I pass on, and I say, I don't see this actually ever getting through the whole process, or I don't like the dialogue, or I don't get the message they're trying to get across.
Right.
So those are reasons that I typically say no. When we got done shooting this, I actually was supposed to go in for another lead of a film where it was very dramatic and very dark. And I did say no, in the sense that I turned down the audition because I said, I need 2 weeks to snuggle with my goats, snuggle with my dogs, have cocktails with the girls, snuggle, you know what I mean? And just build up that joy, because after the 21 days of the psychological challenge of 100 Days to Live, I did need a little bit of a break. So I think it's a balance. Ryan Gosling said that his doctor wrote him a prescription that said, do a comedy. I do think it's about balance.
But you know what? You're right, though. And I love your line just about moxie, because I mean, in the crowded media landscape, if you've got to have sort of the love and the desire to get these passion projects bubbling up to the surface and get them noticed. And I definitely think 100 Days to Live qualifies as that. I just want to say thank you again for the time and congratulations on the film.
Oh, I really appreciate this time with you. Wonderful questions. It was great. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Heidi. Talk to you soon.
Okay, you too. Bye.
Bye, guys.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.